President Donald Trump has now indirectly ordered the meltdown of the American automakers and the auto industry. Hundreds of thousands of employees are being kicked out of their permanent jobs, with the latest 900 workers suddenly laid off. But why are factory gates slamming shut across North America? And why is Stellantis, the titan behind Jeep, Dodge, and Chrysler, warning of a disaster that could ripple through every driveway in America? Well, many thought tariffs would bring back American strength. Instead, they may have just triggered the greatest collapse the auto industry has faced in a generation. But what really happened behind those closed doors? And can America's most iconic cars survive the storm that's coming? In this video, let's know what has happened and where it is leading. It started with barely a whisper, a policy announcement that seemed almost routine after years of tariff wars. On the morning of April 11, 2025, Donald Trump expanded his trade offensive once again, dropping a brutal 25% tariff on imported cars and auto parts. For most Americans, it was just another headline among many. For the auto giants, however, it was the crack of a starting gun, the beginning of a race for survival. Within 24 hours, the consequences were no longer theoretical. Stellantis, the powerhouse behind Jeep, Dodge, Chrysler, and Ram, acted with lightning speed and with chilling clarity. They announced 900 immediate layoffs across 5 key U.S. factories and temporary shutdowns at major assembly plants in Mexico and Canada. It wasn't a warning shot. It was a declaration of a new industrial crisis. At Windsor Assembly in Ontario, where generations of workers had built Chrysler's proud fleet of minivans, silence fell. Toluca Assembly in Mexico, the birthplace of the Jeep Compass and the upcoming electric Wagoneer S, went dead too. Across the Midwest, stamping plants and transmission hubs in Michigan and Indiana were left scrambling, their carefully synchronized supply chains thrown into chaos. It wasn't just about layoffs. It was about ripping the spine out of an industry built on North American integration. In less than 48 hours, an economic earthquake shattered 7,000 jobs across 3 countries, and it quickly became clear. This was not a temporary storm to ride out. It was the opening of a much larger collapse, one that would expose the deep fragility at the heart of America's most iconic car brands. Jeep, the eternal symbol of rugged independence and adventure, found itself paralyzed. With the Toluca assembly crippled, vital parts shortages cascaded through the system. Compass production was suspended indefinitely. Grand Cherokee assembly stalled. Dealerships across the U.S. began reporting empty lots and ballooning wait lists, a cruel contradiction for a brand that had promised limitless freedom on open roads. For customers, the go anywhere, do anything spirit now came with months of waiting and higher sticker prices. Dodge, the muscle car icon that had fueled American dreams of horsepower and rebellion, was battered from all sides. At Brampton Assembly in Canada, costs exploded overnight. Transmissions, steel, electronics, all suddenly far more expensive or delayed. The mighty Charger and Challenger, the last titans of the American muscle era, were now caught in a slow, grinding production collapse. Even Dodge's SUV lifeline, the Durango, was throttled by cascading parts shortages, leaving fans frustrated and furious. Ram trucks, the heart and soul of America's working class, faced devastation too. The mighty Ram 1500, built in Sterling Heights, depended heavily on Mexican engines and Canadian electronics. Now, with tariffs strangling supply lines, production shifts were idled, and inventories dried up. Contractors, farmers, ranchers, the men and women who built their livelihoods on Ram's legendary reliability, were suddenly staring down sticker shock and scarcity. The faithful workhorse was stumbling, and Chrysler, the crown jewel of mid-century American innovation, teetered on the brink. The Windsor-built Pacifica minivan, a staple for suburban families, was halted in its tracks. Dealers faced stock shortages just as families began shopping for summer road trips. Meanwhile, the iconic Chrysler 300, already struggling for survival, now faced a near-certain death as production costs soared beyond profitability. Across every brand Stellantis owns, the story was the same. Higher costs, empty lots, furious customers, laid-off workers, broken dreams. Within a single catastrophic week, Stellantis's proud North American empire, an empire built on 70 years of craftsmanship, loyalty, and innovation, was flipped upside down by a single sheet of tariff policy. And the real tragedy? This was only the first domino to fall. The deeper collapse was still gathering speed. And it wasn't random. It was engineered not by market forces, but by a political decision that shattered an entire industrial model in days. Stellantis, like much of the American auto industry, was never just a patchwork of U.S. factories. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of North American integration, built carefully over decades. But tariffs do not respect balance. They smash it. When Trump's brutal 25% tariffs hit imported cars and parts, they didn't just slap a tax on foreign goods. They detonated the supply arteries that fed America's auto factories. What once flowed seamlessly across borders now became an economic minefield overnight. Critical parts like transmissions, semiconductors, and batteries either soared in cost or disappeared altogether, suffocating the very plants that once thrived on global connectivity. The numbers are staggering. According to global data, nearly 50% of cars sold in the U.S. are imported, many tied to chains running through Mexico and Canada. Stellantis was particularly exposed. Its models were built on the assumption that open trade would endure. Now, cornered by tariffs, Stellantis faced a vicious choice: absorb billions in penalties and risk collapse, pass those costs to already struggling consumers, or shut down factories to survive. They chose survival, but at a devastating cost. The price of survival: people's lives, their dreams, and the very spirit of American mobility. Experts now predict that the U.S. auto industry will absorb over $107.7 billion in added production costs over the next year, a staggering burden. Of that, Stellantis alone shoulders $41.9 billion. The human impact is already being felt. In a cruel twist of fate, the brands that once symbolized American freedom are now slipping out of reach for the very workers who built them. A Jeep Compass, once an affordable ticket to adventure, is on track to cost over $30,000 for a basic model, pricing out young families, first-time buyers, and middle-class dreamers. A Ram 1500, the workhorse pickup that powered America's farms, ranches, and construction sites, could now exceed $50,000 for even the most stripped-down trim. These are not mere price hikes. They are economic walls, pushing working-class Americans out of their own culture, their own brands, their own dreams, road trips, muscle car races, rugged off-road adventures. The experiences that once defined generations are slipping away, drowned in tariffs and corporate panic. The icons are under siege, and this time, it's not from foreign competition. It's from within. In the wreckage, Stellantis isn't waving a white flag, not yet. The automaker is scrambling desperately to pivot, innovate, and survive. Jeep is accelerating plans to launch the Wagoneer S, an all-electric SUV built in the U.S., hoping to bypass tariff chaos. Dodge is teasing an electric Charger, a last stand for muscle car culture in a carbon-conscious era. Ram is developing hybrid trucks, betting that mixing old power with new technology will offer a lifeline. Chrysler, fighting for relevance, is quietly investing in an electric Pacifica minivan, trying to secure a future in family transport. But the reality is brutal. Building new factories takes years, not months. Developing new electric models demands billions in investment, and consumer patience is running out. Customers hammered by inflation, rising interest rates, and pandemic aftershocks are unlikely to wait quietly. Brand loyalty is fragile, and in a year like this, it shatters easily. Even if Stellantis succeeds technically, the deeper question looms. Will anyone still be able to afford the new era they're racing to build? But things get even more devastating. Beyond glossy marketing campaigns and future concept cars, there are the lives left wrecked in the debris. In Windsor, 4,500 Canadian auto workers face a grim uncertainty as Chrysler's production hub sits idle. In Toluca, 2,400 Mexican workers find themselves caught in a deadly limbo, still technically employed, but with no cars to build and no clear future ahead. And across Michigan and Indiana, 900 U.S. workers wait, anxious and angry, as temporary layoffs threaten to become permanent scars. These workers aren't just numbers. They are parents, veterans, immigrants, and dreamers, the real heartbeat of Stellantis's brands. Furthermore, local economies, tightly woven around these plants, are already unraveling. Schools, small diners, and mom-and-pop auto shops, all dependent on a steady paycheck flow, are feeling the pinch. Unions like the UAW in the United States and Unifor in Canada are furious, openly blaming Stellantis leadership for gross mismanagement and greed. They argue that the company gambled with workers' livelihoods for years, prioritizing stock buybacks, inflated executive bonuses, and flashy EV promises instead of fortifying supply chains against known political risks. The anger is real, the betrayal is raw, and as the layoffs spread and the factories stay dark, it's becoming clear. This isn't just a temporary tariff fight. It's an existential crisis for the American auto worker and for the soul of brands that once symbolized freedom, resilience, and American grit. Now, if anyone still thinks this is just about quarterly earnings or Wall Street margins, they are blind to the bigger tragedy unfolding. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on the latest news stories on geopolitics, economics, and current affairs impacting your lives. Now, this isn't just a corporate collapse. It's a collapse of American identity itself, a slow-motion funeral for legends that helped build the American spirit. Jeep is not just a vehicle. It's the spirit of World War II victory, the symbol of rugged independence that ferried soldiers across battered European fields. It was an adventure on wheels, built for freedom's roughest battles, and now it's being priced out of the very families that made it legendary. Dodge isn't just a brand, it's American horsepower incarnate. It's the roar of a Charger on a country back road, the thunder of a Challenger across a drag strip, the unapologetic defiance of muscle against the world. Now that proud growl is sputtering, choked by costs, delays, and fading dreams. Ram is not just a pickup, it's the backbone of rural America. The farmers, the builders, the dreamers who fed and built this country trusted Ram to be there, through storms and sweat. Now, tariffs and supply chaos are cutting that backbone at the knees. Trucks, once as reliable as the sunrise, are becoming luxury items that rural buyers can no longer afford. Chrysler, once the crown jewel of Detroit's innovation, the company that gave America the minivan, revolutionized family travel, and once dared to challenge Cadillac and Lincoln, now flickers like a dying light bulb, uncertain if it will see another decade. This is not just economic damage. It's personal. It's cultural. It's the slow death of stories passed from grandfather to grandson about the first trucks, the first road trips, first car races. It's the erosion of American legends written not in books, but across highways, farms, and city streets. Losing Stellantis isn't just losing jobs. It's losing a piece of who America believed it was. But can Stellantis ride out the storm? History whispers that survival is possible, but only just. Jeep once rose from the rubble of war, evolving from a utilitarian battlefield hero into a global icon of freedom. Dodge battled through the collapse of the muscle car era in the 1970s and came back swinging, creating modern legends like the Hellcat. Ram fought its way out from Ford and Chevy's shadows, winning the loyalty of the American worker with toughness and grit no marketing campaign could fake. Chrysler has reinvented itself more times than most companies survive, pulling miracles like the 1980s minivan revolution and the 2000s Chrysler 300 resurgence. But if history teaches resilience, it also teaches ruthlessness. Because in a world reshaped by policy earthquakes and broken supply chains, nostalgia is not enough. Blind patriotism doesn't build factories overnight. Tariffs don't summon assembly lines out of thin air. And lost trust, with workers bleeding paychecks and customers priced out, is nearly impossible to win back once it's shattered. Stellantis now faces a brutal, bloody race against time. They must localize production, not in years, but in months, or watch tariffs strangle them. They must innovate products, like the EVs that people actually want and can afford, or become dinosaurs in a green revolution. Furthermore, they must stabilize broken factories and rebuild battered workforces in the middle of political chaos. Even they must earn back the loyalty of Americans who are watching their dreams slip farther away with every dealership markup. And they must do all of this while hemorrhaging billions of dollars in lost revenue and rising costs, with competitors like Ford, GM, and even Tesla circling like sharks sensing blood in the water. If they succeed, Jeep, Dodge, Ram, and Chrysler may survive to roar down American highways once again. If they fail, the result won't just be another corporate bankruptcy filing. It will be a gaping cultural wound, the kind that doesn't just hurt wallets, but carves out pieces of national pride. And that's the real cost of this trade war. Not just dollars lost, but dreams abandoned. Now, there are signs that Trump is seeing the cracks appearing in the U.S. auto industry. Therefore, he appears to back down. As Trump's team scrambled to contain the fallout, Stellantis, along with Ford and General Motors, cautiously welcomed the possibility of a temporary tariff exemption. But the damage had already begun to spiral. For Stellantis, the hope was not just about salvaging profits. It was about buying time to stabilize collapsing supply chains, reopen critical plants like Windsor and Toluca, and stem the flood of layoffs already battering its North American workforce. Even with Trump hinting at flexibility, the fear remained. Would these exemptions be real, or would they vanish again at the president's next mood swing? Internally, Stellantis executives recognized that any delay in tariffs was only a breathing space, not a solution. It would take months, if not years, to reconfigure production entirely inside U.S. borders, something Trump's sudden tariffs had assumed could happen instantly. Reopening shuttered plants, securing new domestic suppliers, and retraining displaced workers would be a monumental task even under ideal conditions. Now, with public trust eroding and economic uncertainty growing, Stellantis faced a race against the clock. Could they stabilize operations before the political winds shifted again? Meanwhile, lobbying efforts intensified. Auto industry leaders, realizing that Trump's reversal instincts could be influenced by sustained pressure, leaned heavily on Washington. The American Automotive Policy Council and other groups made the case that without reliable, affordable parts from North America's integrated network, even the strongest brands like Jeep, Dodge, Ram, and Chrysler would bleed customers to foreign competitors not facing the same chaos. It wasn't just about patriotism, it was about survival. Yet, despite Trump's talk of exemptions and flexibility, companies like Stellantis remained on high alert. The volatility of the White House's position meant they had to assume the worst while hoping for the best. Even if Trump eased tariffs temporarily, the next escalation could come at any moment with a fresh round of duties, new restrictions, or political retaliation against perceived corporate disloyalty. Stellantis knew that survival wouldn't come from waiting for government mercy. It would come from moving fast, adapting supply chains where possible, cutting unnecessary costs, and preparing for a future where American manufacturing could no longer rely on predictable policy at all. You see, Trump's backing down created a temporary pause in the economic bleeding, but the trust had already been shattered. For companies like Stellantis, the message was clear. There would be no lasting stability as long as political chaos could rewrite the rules of trade overnight. Even if the exemptions held, the auto industry had entered a new era, one where uncertainty was permanent and survival depended not on government help, but on brutal self-reinvention. What do you think? Is Donald Trump unintentionally signing the death order of the U.S. automakers while protecting tech companies standing behind his back? Do you feel tariffs are hurting America more than they were supposed to hurt American rivals? In the comment section below, share your thoughts on whether the American automakers would go extinct at the end of Trump's term. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring the latest news stories on geopolitics, economics, changing world order, and current affairs. Things you need to stay informed. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.